How you handle interruptions can mean the difference between a day that's really productive and one that goes completely off the rails. Hi there, I'm Amy Shield, time management and productivity coach for small business owners and solopreneurs. And today I'm sharing 4 of the worst ways that you can possibly handle interruptions. Interruptions might be inevitable, but guess what? They're not unavoidable. Still, so many people, millions of people, handle interruptions in unproductive ways every single day. And while some interruptions are worth your immediate time and attention, others are much less important, but they still hijack countless hours of the workday. If interruptions go unchecked, you'll repeatedly lose time, energy, and productivity. That impacts both your business and your personal well-being. I wanted to share these 4 terrible ways to handle interruptions in an effort to raise some awareness around some really common behaviors that, by the way, I am totally guilty of myself sometimes. Awareness is the first step toward change, and sometimes awareness alone can be the catalyst to making permanent shifts. If you haven't gone more than a single day without interruptions throwing your schedule off track, then you're probably handling interruptions in one of these 4 ways. Before I get into this, I just need to make a quick note. Sometimes interruptions are going to come up that truly do need your immediate time and energy. That's always a judgment call on your part, though. I can't tell you which interruptions to address ASAP and which ones to put on the back burner, although I might make some suggestions. In short, I'm not saying here that if somebody has a broken leg or there's a fire or a very serious issue arises with one of your clients, that you should disregard that interruption so that you can blindly focus on the task that you were originally working on. Okay, that's not what I'm saying here at all. Rather, I'm encouraging you to notice and discern how and why interruptions impact your productivity and well-being and make any desired adjustments. Now that I have that little disclaimer out of the way, let's jump into 4 of the worst ways that you can possibly handle interruptions. The first of the worst ways to handle interruptions is dropping everything every time you're interrupted to address whatever issue has come up. Now, this particular approach is very common among people who tend toward perfectionistic or people-pleasing tendencies. The immediate desire to please other people, to be highly responsive, or to demonstrate expertise outweighs the need to focus on the work at hand or what you had originally planned to be working on. Because I work with a lot of heart-centered small business owners and solopreneurs, this particular issue of dropping everything every time an interruption comes up a lot with my work with my clients. And what a lot of them will say is, gosh, I just feel like if I don't get back to somebody immediately, if I don't solve their problem immediately, if I'm not giving them an immediate solution, then they're going to be upset with me. They're going to think that I'm not reliable and trustworthy. They're going to think that I'm not doing a good enough job or that I don't care about them. And so because of all of those reasons, all of those beliefs that they have happening subconsciously, they think that they have to drop everything anytime an interruption comes up so that they can address it immediately. Now, when I turn the tables on my clients and ask, okay, so do you expect that same kind of responsiveness when you make a request of somebody else? They say, oh gosh, no, of course not. I give people tons of time and grace. I know they have other things going on. I understand that I'm not their only client or I'm not the only person calling their business or whatever the case might be. So of course I don't expect an immediate response. And universally, when this conversation happens in coaching sessions, this kind of moment of clarity comes over their face and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a double standard. Why am I okay with giving other people grace, but I don't accept the possibility that others could give me grace if I don't respond to them immediately? And that's just one of the ways that when I work with clients, I start examining those beliefs with them and helping them shake the foundations a little bit so that they can rebuild their beliefs about themselves, about their ability to manage their time, and ultimately grow their business a little bit more. So what happens as a result when somebody drops everything every time to address every little interruption that comes up? A lot of times their time and energy get redirected to a task that's a lot less important. And that original thing that they had planned to work on, the important thing, they have to figure out a different time to work on it, a different time to get it done. And a lot of times that means creeping into personal time, or it takes time away from other important projects or other things on the calendar. And guess what? That creates more stress. So the more that you drop everything every time to address every interruption, the less you're ultimately getting done, the less productive you're going to be. And ultimately, the more stress you're creating for yourself. Now, I have to say this, if you recognize this behavior in yourself, this drop everything every time to address every interruption, you might be tempted to feel ashamed or maybe even to criticize yourself. I just want you to know that this behavior is ingrained in your brain and it's usually tied to deeply held beliefs. Okay, so it's not anything to be ashamed of. It's just the way that your brain has learned to survive in the world. And the great news is that it's something you can change. Now, for some people, dropping everything every time to handle every interruption is more of a matter of, I won't be able to stop thinking about this until I address it and resolve it. Now, as a coach, I would explore that thought with them because most people have way more control over their attention and focus than they believe or than they give themselves credit for. However, as I said earlier, what you decide to do is always your judgment call. So if you think that the interruption is worth addressing, address it. The second of my 4 worst ways to handle interruptions is disregarding them altogether and having zero system to follow up on them in the future. It's really important to have a system in place to identify and follow up on interruptions as they occur. Otherwise, items that are important but not necessarily urgent can easily slip through the cracks. For example, some people don't think it's important or valuable to write things down or put them in a map or in a Word document, whatever the case might be. Or they don't think that it's important to write things down someplace where they will see and remember them. They might think that it's a waste of time, and maybe they even tell themselves, hey, I don't need to write that down. I'll be able to remember it. And some of them do because they have amazing memories. But the human brain can only hold so much information at the same time. And so inevitably, a lot of these people end up forgetting a thing, sometimes a really important thing, and they end up wasting more time and energy trying to make up for forgetting the thing than it would have taken to just write it down in the first place or put it on your calendar or have some kind of system to address and follow up with those interruptions as they occur. Disregarding interruptions with no follow-up plan a lot of times leads to things like missed meetings, overlooked details, getting behind on ongoing discussions over email, and even missing the nuance in various complex issues. Others might notice this behavior and think that you don't value their time or their needs. You might also be tempted to be angry with yourself for allowing things to slip through the cracks. It's totally possible to address this issue with a simple follow-up system and a little bit of mindset work. Being angry with yourself might push you into making some changes in the short term, but it's really not necessary to live in this space of, if I forget to address this, I'll never forgive myself, so I have to make sure I remember. Number 3 on my list of terrible ways to handle interruptions can be kind of a sneaky little trick that your brain plays on you. Imagine this. You're at the beginning of a time block to work on something that's important for your business, but it's also pretty challenging and you're making progress, but wow, it's a lot of effort. Suddenly, an email notification pops up. It's an oasis of ease in the dunes of cognitive effort that you've been trudging through. Someone is asking for your help with a task that you're totally capable of. You click over to the email, start working on it, and eventually get it all wrapped up and fire off your response. You click back to your calendar and see that it's time for lunch or another meeting or a different time block, or maybe it's even the end of the day. Oh, and that important thing you were working on earlier, it's not done and you'll need to figure out when to finish it up. I'm not saying I've never done this before. I totally have, and there is a great chance that I'll do it again at some point in the future. Now, from a neurochemical perspective, it makes total sense that your brain would want to switch away from the difficult work at hand and move on to something that's, number one, new, which could trigger dopamine, that is also very achievable, which can trigger serotonin, and will help someone else, which can trigger oxytocin. All of those feel-good chemicals and hormones in your brain are much more enjoyable in the moment than doing difficult, mentally taxing work. So again, it makes perfect sense that your brain would want to abandon the difficult work in favor of something that is a quick, easy win. Again, deciding whether you want to pursue an interruption in the moment is always your judgment call. However, if it isn't an urgent issue, it can easily distract you from the more important, albeit probably more complex work at hand. The fourth thing on my list of the 4 worst ways to handle interruptions is to allow them to hijack your mood. This is probably one of the most perilous ways to react to an interruption because it can impact the rest of your day. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been interrupted while you were working on something important and you were irritated, angry, frustrated for the rest of the day? How did that impact your ability to get things done? Letting frustration rule the rest of your day after an interruption is kind of like a teacher punishing the 6th-hour class for the misbehavior of the students in the 5th-hour class. The frustration might be justified, but it's misdirected and destructive. Now, it's totally normal to feel frustrated or irritated or even angry when you've been interrupted. However, if you marinate on that frustration or irritation, it can be totally disastrous for your day. Trying to concentrate, trying to be creative, or solve problems when you're upset can feel like a huge uphill battle. If you allow your anger or similar emotions to stick around after an interruption, it can significantly impact your ability to get things done. Interruptions are a fact of business and life. However, we can always choose how we react to them. Today, I shared 4 of the worst possible ways that you can react to an interruption. Here's a quick recap. Number 1, dropping everything every time to address every interruption. Number 2, disregarding interruptions and not having any kind of a plan or system to follow up with them at a later time. Number 3, using interruptions as distractions from the work at hand. And number 4, allowing interruptions to hijack your mood. If interruptions are constantly hijacking your time and energy, I get it. I'm also here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way, and there are a few different ways that I may be able to help you. First, you can download my free comprehensive time management guide. It includes some strategies to help you plan for and manage unexpected interruptions. Second, I coach people like you one-on-one to change their approach to time management. That includes things like interruptions, distractions, and everything else under the human umbrella that impacts our ability to manage our time effectively. Schedule a free call with me today to talk about what's going on and explore some options. Hey, thank you so much for checking out my video today. My name's Amy Shield, time management and productivity coach for small business owners and solopreneurs. Hope you have an awesome day. Bye-bye.